Umoja had always been a village of light. Lanterns flickered in every doorway, laughter echoed through the narrow streets, and the annual festival of colors was the crown jewel of their traditions. It was the time when grudges were set aside, families reunited, and old wounds forgotten, at least for a while. But this year, something felt different. Something felt wrong. The air was heavy, thick with a humidity that clung to the skin. The night sky, usually speckled with stars, was a dull, suffocating black, as if the heavens had turned their backs on the village below. The trees that lined the festival square swayed without wind, their twisted branches casting strange, shifting shadows against the mud brick houses. At the heart of the village stood two houses, locked in a silent war against each other, one belonging to the Moyo family, the other to the Keto family. For as long as anyone could remember, these two families had been at odds. Their feud ran so deep that children were warned never to play near the other's home. If a Moyo child so much as exchanged words with a Keto, whispers would spread, mothers would pull their young ones inside, and elders would shake their heads with disappointment. But no one truly remembered why the families hated each other. Some believed it had started over land, others whispered of a broken promise, a betrayal lost in time. But the elders, the ones who refused to speak of it, carried an unspoken truth in their eyes, one they were too afraid to share. The village square was alive with preparation for the festival. Long, colorful ribbons hung from wooden poles, and fresh woven mats were laid out for the performances. Drums rested in a perfect circle, waiting for the festival's opening ceremony. Yet, beneath the surface, a strange tension rippled through the air. Amina Moyo felt it most of all. She had grown up hearing the stories about the rivalry, the strange happenings during past festivals, the rumors that the Moyo and Keto families were somehow cursed. She never believed it, but tonight, as she walked through the nearly empty festival grounds, her certainty wavered. The air smelled different, tinged with something metallic. The lanterns flickered erratically, casting jittery shadows along the ground. Amina hugged her arms around herself. Then, she saw it. At the far edge of the square stood the Keto family's festival float. Each year, the families competed to create the grandest display. But instead of the usual bright cloth and beaded ornaments, the Keto float was draped in deep red fabric, so dark it looked nearly black. A single carving sat at its center, an eerie, faceless figure with outstretched hands. Amina felt a chill run through her. She took a hesitant step forward. The carving seemed to breathe in the dim torchlight. The longer she stared, the more the faceless figure seemed to twist, its hollow features stretching into something almost human. Then, she heard it. A whisper. A sound so faint she wasn't sure if it had come from the wind or from something else. "Do not look too closely, child." Her breath hitched. The voice slithered into her ears, wrapping around her like a cold mist. Amina turned sharply, her heart hammering in her chest. No one was there. The festival square was silent, save for the distant murmur of the villagers finishing their preparations. When she turned back to the float, the carving was different. It had eyes. Deep, hollow sockets stared back at her. Amina stumbled backward, a sharp cry escaping her lips. Suddenly, laughter erupted from behind her. Kwezi Keto, a boy from the rival family, emerged from the shadows, his smirk wide and amused. "Scared of a piece of wood, Moyo?" he teased. Amina's chest rose and fell quickly as she tried to steady her breath. "What is that thing?" she demanded, nodding toward the carving. Kwezi's smirk faltered just slightly. He looked at the figure, then back at her. "It's part of our family's festival float," he said, voice carefully neutral. "Nothing to be afraid of." "Then why does it look like it's watching me?" Amina shot back. Kwezi hesitated. The usual arrogance in his stance wavered. Then, forcing a grin, he shrugged. maybe it likes you." Amina didn't laugh. She could still feel the whisper in her ears, curling around her thoughts like smoke. "You should go home, Moyo," Kwezi added, his playful tone masking something else, something wary. "It's not safe to be out alone tonight." Before Amina could respond, a loud crash echoed through the square. The festival's largest drum, a sacred piece passed down through generations, had tipped over. A group of elders rushed to the scene, their faces pale. Someone gasped. Others murmured hurried prayers under their breath. But Amina wasn't looking at the drum. She was looking at the dirt beneath it. There, in the freshly overturned soil, were footprints. Not human footprints. Something longer. Deeper. And there were too many of them. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She took a step back, bumping into Kwezi, who had also gone rigid with unease. Then, before anyone could speak, a voice rang out from across the square. "The Baobab Tree, it's bleeding." A silence fell over the crowd. Amina turned toward the great Baobab grove, where the village's sacred tree stood. A crowd had gathered at its base, their torches flickering in the dark. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the villagers. Amina didn't want to see it. She didn't want to know. But her feet moved anyway. She pushed past the growing crowd, her heart pounding. And then she saw it. A thick, dark substance was seeping from the tree's bark. It ran in slow rivulets, pulling at the roots. It was red. It was thick. It smelled wrong. Amina swallowed hard. It looked like blood. A hush settled over the village. Then, in the heavy silence, an elder spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "The spirit has awakened." Amina felt the coldness settle deep into her bones. Somewhere in the distance, the festival drums began to play. But the rhythm was off. Slower. Heavier. Like a heartbeat. Boom. 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 And then, from the depths of the Baobab grove, a single, low whisper crawled through the night air. The debt was never paid. Amina's vision blurred. Her skin turned cold. Something had been waiting. And now, it was awake. The village of Umoja had always believed itself to be protected by the spirits of the land. Their ancestors had walked this soil, whispered blessings into the wind, and planted the great Baobab tree to bind their fate together. But now, that tree was bleeding. The thick, dark liquid oozing from its bark wasn't sap. It was too red, too much like blood. And worse, it carried a scent that sent a wave of nausea through Amina. The villagers stood frozen in terror, staring at the unnatural sight. Amina swallowed hard, her mind racing. Had they all gone mad? Was this some strange trick of the night? And then came the whisper. The debt was never paid. The words curled through the air, soft yet suffocating, like breath against the back of her neck. The elders stood deathly still. A few clutched their staffs, their faces drawn with recognition. It was clear that they knew something. Then, Elder Keto stepped forward. He was the oldest man in the village, his back hunched, his face carved with lines deeper than the roots of the baobab. His voice trembled when he spoke. "This has happened before." Gasps rippled through the villagers. Whispers rose like wind through dry leaves. Elder Moyo stepped up beside him, gripping the old man's arm with an iron grip. "Do not speak of it," he hissed. "Not here. Not now." But Elder Keto shook him off. His old eyes locked onto Amina's, and she felt a chill spread down her spine. "The last time the tree bled," he said slowly, "two families tore the village apart." Amina's heart pounded. Two families. The Moyo and Keto families. She turned to Kwezi Keto, who stood frozen at her side. His face had gone pale, all traces of his usual arrogance gone. The whispers around them grew frantic. "What does it mean?" Someone asked. Is the spirit angry? Did someone break the festival's laws? The elders ignored them. Instead, Elder Keto pointed a shaking finger at the ground beneath the tree. The roots of the baobab do not lie. They remember. And then, he did something that no one had expected. He took his knife and cut his palm. Dark red blood dripped onto the roots. The crowd gasped in horror. Even the most hardened warriors flinched. Blood never touched the sacred baobab. It was forbidden. A sign of deep disrespect. But something strange happened. The moment Keto's blood touched the soil, the tree stopped bleeding. The liquid seeping from its bark slowed, then hardened into deep, jagged lines, like old scars. The thick, iron-like scent faded into the air. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, the drums began to beat again. Boom! 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 But this time, they were not festival drums. They were warning drums. The villagers turned to the elders, fear in their eyes. Elder Keto clenched his fist, his blood dripping onto the sacred roots. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. The spirit does not want our festival, he said. It wants justice. That night, the village gathered in the largest hut, where meetings of great importance were held. The air inside was thick with the scent of burning sage, an attempt to ward off whatever unseen force had been stirred awake. Amina and Kwezi sat close to the center, their minds racing. Elder Keto's voice carried through the tense silence. Long ago, he began, Umoja was not like it is now. There were no feuds. No rival families. We were one. He glanced at Elder Moyo, whose lips pressed into a tight line. Amina noticed that his hands were clenched into fists. But peace is fragile, Keto continued. It takes only one mistake to shatter it. He took a deep breath. Many generations ago, two men, one from the Moyo family, one from the Keto family, committed an unspeakable sin. The villagers leaned in. Even the children, usually restless at night, sat wide-eyed and silent. The festival was different back then, Elder Keto said. It was not a celebration of colors. It was a celebration of sacrifice. Amina's breath hitched. She looked at Kwezi, who was equally stunned. Sacrifice. The spirit of the baobab demanded an offering each year, Elder Keto explained. Not an animal. Not a thing. But a soul. A shiver passed through the hut. The villagers looked at one another, unease spreading like wildfire. It was a terrible custom, Elder Moyo spoke for the first time. But it kept the village safe. The spirit gave us prosperity, protection, rain for our crops. Until one year. Elder Keto's face darkened. 1 year, the chosen sacrifice escaped. Amina's stomach twisted. The village panicked, Keto went on. Without the sacrifice, the spirit would turn against us. So the two men, one from Moyo, one from Keto, made a terrible decision. The room was deathly silent. They took a child. Amina's chest tightened. They killed an innocent, Elder Keto whispered. And buried the truth. They lied to the spirit. The villagers gasped in horror. That was the debt, Keto continued. An innocent life taken in place of the chosen one. The Baobab Tree never forgot. And neither did the spirit. Amina could barely breathe. A child. Murdered to cover a mistake. But the spirit did not punish the village immediately, Keto added. It waited. Elder Moyo clenched his jaw. It waited for the bloodline of those two men to come together again. Amina's eyes widened. Kwezi stiffened beside her. The realization hit her like a crashing wave. She and Kwezi were the descendants. The ones chosen to pay the debt. Boom. 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 The drums outside the hut began to play. Only this time. No one was playing them. Amina's blood ran cold. The sound came from the baobab grove. Boom, boom, boom. Something was calling them. Something was coming. The warning drums echoed through the village, a hollow, relentless rhythm that sent a chill through Amina's bones. Each beat felt like a pulse in the darkness, a voice calling for something ancient, something that had waited too long to be answered. She and Kwezi stood at the center of the gathering hut, surrounded by the villagers, their faces filled with fear and confusion. The elders had just spoken the unthinkable. They were the ones chosen to pay the spirit's debt. Amina felt her breath quicken. The air in the hut was thick, suffocating. Kwezi hadn't moved since the revelation, his face frozen in shock. Then, Elder Keto spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "It is time." Amina shook her head. "Time for what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "To end this," Elder Moyo answered. Boom, boom, boom. The drums did not stop. The spirit was waiting. Kwezi finally turned to Amina, his voice hoarse. "We don't have to do this," he muttered. "We can run." Elder Keto shook his head. "No one escapes the baobab's shadow." Amina wanted to scream. Why them? They had done nothing wrong. It was a crime committed generations ago. Why did they have to pay for it? The air grew colder. Amina could see the villagers shiver, pulling their cloaks tighter around themselves. The fire at the center of the hut flickered, then dimmed, as if something unseen had drawn the heat from the room. Then, from outside, a child's voice. Soft. Calling. "Help me." Amina's blood turned to ice. It was a child's voice. But there were no children outside. Kwezi took a step back. "Did you hear that?" Elder Moyo's face darkened. "It begins." The villagers huddled closer together. Some muttered prayers. Others simply held their breath. Amina felt a pull in her chest. A force, unseen but undeniable, urging her to move. Toward the voice. Toward the baobab grove. She turned to Kwezi, her heart pounding. "We have to go." Kwezi's eyes widened. "Are you insane?" She didn't know if she was. But she knew this wouldn't stop unless they answered. Taking a deep breath, she stepped toward the door. And the moment she did, the wind died. The hut fell into an unnatural silence. The night outside was too still, too expectant. Kwezi cursed under his breath but followed her. The elders did not stop them. They knew it was useless. Because the debt would be paid, one way or another. Amina and Kwezi stepped outside, the cold night air wrapping around them like a second skin. The village behind them was eerily quiet, watching but unwilling to follow. The baobab grove stood at the edge of Umoja, a sacred place no one dared enter at night. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted roots sprawling across the earth. And at the center of it all, the ancient baobab. It was waiting for them. The air around it hummed, charged with something old and hungry. Kwezi grabbed Amina's arm. "Are you sure about this?" Amina swallowed hard. No. But they had no choice. Slowly, they approached the tree. The moment they stepped onto its roots, the world shifted. The night deepened. The stars above flickered, as if they were being swallowed by an unseen force. The air thickened, pressing against their skin. And then, the child appeared. She stood beneath the tree, barefoot, wearing a torn white garment. Her eyes were dark pools of emptiness, her face blurred at the edges like a fading memory. Amina's breath caught. The girl was not real. But she was here. Kwezi's grip tightened on Amina's arm. "Who are you?" he whispered. The girl tilted her head. And then, she smiled. It was a terrible smile. Because it was not hers. It stretched too wide, too unnatural, like something was wearing her face. And then she spoke. You came. The words slithered through the air, twisting into Amina's mind like cold fingers. She wanted to run. Every part of her screamed to turn back. But she couldn't move. Do you know my name? The girl asked. Amina's throat tightened. She didn't. The girl's smile widened. Then how can you set me free? The ground trembled beneath them. The baobab's roots shifted, twisting upward like grasping hands. The tree was waking up. Kwezi pulled Amina back. What do we do? The girl took a step closer. You have to choose, she whispered. Amina's heart pounded. Choose what? The girl's face darkened. Who takes my place? The words hit like a hammer. The air grew suffocating. Kwezi's grip on her arm loosened. Amina turned to him, eyes wide. We can't. Kwezi's expression was unreadable. His face was tight with fear, but in his eyes, she saw something else. Desperation. We have to, he whispered. It's us all. The girl giggled. A terrible sound. You can always refuse, she said sweetly. The ground shook violently. The wind roared to life. And in the darkness, shapes began to emerge. Shadowy figures, distorted, twisted, their faces blurred. They reached for Amina, for Kwezi, whispering in voices too fractured to understand. The spirit was growing impatient. The girl's smile faded. Choose. Amina's mind raced. There had to be another way. There had to be. And then, she understood. She turned to Kwezi. It's not about choosing someone else. His brow furrowed. What? Amina took a deep breath, her hands shaking. The debt isn't just about blood, she whispered. It's about truth. The girl stilled. Amina turned back to her. Your name, she said softly. Tell me your name. For the first time, the girl hesitated. The wind died. The whispers stopped. Amina's pulse raced. Your name, she repeated. You said we had to set you free. The girl's dark eyes met hers. And then, she whispered it. Her real name. The moment the word left her lips, the baobab groaned, a deep, ancient sound that shook the air. The shadows recoiled. The wind howled one last time, then vanished. Amina and Kwezi stumbled back, gasping. The girl was gone. The baobab stood silent once more, its roots still, its bark healed. It was over. Or so they thought. Because somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something else was still waiting.